IKONINI. So ushaitekige story fulani alafu the story was so depressing that ukashindwa even like how you're supposed to react. And this is a story that shows you how rotten the system is. And by the system I mean that the system that has run this country since 1963. And this is not just about the system as a political system, but the whole system, like the way we make our money as a society, the way we look at wealth, and the way we look at honesty and integrity. Wacha tusikize hii story.
At Abyan Hospital in Eastleigh, the child was referred to KNH National Hospital, but the ambulance transferring the child from Kajiado diverted them to the private facility, ignoring clear instructions in the referral letter. Now the child is fighting for his life in ICU without parental care, as the hospital has barred the parents from seeing the child until they pay a bill of 3 million shillings. Mary Moki reports.
So, masikia hiyo. So, kuna mtoi alikuwa msick Masaiza Loitoktok. Alafu akakuwa referred to KNH National Hospital. And the ambulance that took the mother ended up going to a private hospital inaitwa Abyan. Now Abyan wame come up with a bill of 3 million shillings. And how many Kenyans can afford 3 million shillings? I think the last time nilicheki kulikuwa na some statistic that the number of Kenyans that earn more than 100,000 shillings per month, I think it was less than 500,000. I think it was even less than that. I think it's less than 250,000 Kenyans. Like, it's ridiculous. It's a low number. So 3 million shillings, even for someone who earns 1 million shillings a month, 3 million shillings is a lot of money. Because umsewa 1 million a month would have to be living at such a low nini yake ni aweze kuraise pesa kama hii. So try to imagine a woman who lives in Loitoktok anafaa come up naido. And it gets worse. Like, even before they started extorting this 3 million shillings from her, because that's what's happening. It's an extortion. Other things had happened before where it's a doctor was extorting her. Wacha tusikize.
A mother's worst nightmare. Esther Ulavu sits in a dimly lit motel in Eastleigh, her eyes swollen and voice trembling. What was supposed to be a routine corrective surgery turned into a medical nightmare. Her woes began when the operating surgeon first demanded for 5,000 for him to undertake the surgery.
Atiku fala anaitwa, I think anaitwa Henry Ngeno. So ali demand 5,000 shillings nianze perform surgery. Raising this 5,000 shillings was hard for this woman. And utacheki. Keep that in mind. Raising the 5,000 shillings was hard. Keep that in mind. And this reminded me something that Ian told me. Ian alinipatia story fulani that there's a time when someone was being operated on in one of the Kenya hospitals. And basically they started a cesarean section. So wakamkata, alafu after wamkate wakamwambia you need to deposit 100,000 shillings for us to continue. This is actually legal. That's legal. Wamempasua wakamwambia before we continue you need to deposit 100,000 shillings. And this shows you how the medical field, it's so rotten. And when you think about fixing Kenya, we only think about the political side. We never think about the medical field. And the way, the same way that cops have this blue code where cops protect cops, I always say that in Kenya, you're the KMPDC, whatever the hell, protects bad doctors. Of course, they'll always be like, nah, we don't do it. But they do it. And I always say that I'm a victim of that. How am I a victim of that? Bro, Biggie passed away because of negligence. I tried to report that shit. I think even someone gave me a Luga's number. Luga lini blue tick. That's the reality. So every time I see doctors protesting, I always have two opinions on it. One opinion is like, okay, someone needs to listen to them. The second opinion is, do they really care? People will be like, no, but they save 1 million. Yes, you can save 1 million people, but if you're letting 10,000 people die because of negligence, there's a problem. There is no, you can't, I think Chris Rock joked that you cannot afford to have bad apples. And that's the situation where we have, where in the Kenya medical field, there's a lot of bad apples. And of course, kuna sotangalia sema that all these crimes are not committed by doctors. So there's that side. So a hospital is not run by a doctor. A hospital is a whole institution. It's a business. It's a what. So we are going to look at that. But hii ya mtu kupasuliwa na kuambiwa you have to finish paying before we continue. That's a doctor that's involved in that crime. Acheki. Hii story ya 5,000, that's a doctor involved in that crime. But then we'll come and talk about Abyan and talk about now that whole medical field and the way it's full of criminals. By medical field, I don't mean doctors, but now I think I should call it the medical industry. But wacha tuendelee.
Nikamwambia daktari, mimi nimetafuta hiyo 5K sijapata, nitafanya aje na siku imefika? Akanambia kama hujapata mtoto hatafanyiwa mpaka upate.
The operating surgeon admits asking for money, saying the request is a normal one.
That was for the catheter. I think we talked with the mother.
Esther says her baby was overdosed with anesthesia and his heart stopped twice. The doctors admitted his brain lacked oxygen for several minutes and he slipped into a coma.
How, as a trained doctor, can you overdose a kid with anesthesia? I'm not even a medical doctor, but I'd know that if I'm dealing with a kid, I'm supposed to take more precaution. You know why you do that? You do that if you know you can get away with it. You can keep your license. There's not going to be any criminal charges against you. There's going to be nothing. And that's the problem with this country. The problem with this country is if you're rich enough, you're powerful enough, you can get away with anything. This woman, she's a poor woman. The probability of her getting justice is next to zero. That's the reality. We can sugarcoat it and claim what, but the probability of justice is next to zero. This kid lacked oxygen for I think up to 7 minutes. Even if this kid gets out of this coma, will this kid ever be able to live a normal life? Why do we allow this? Because we allow this as a society when we tell people that it does not matter how you make your money as long as you make your money. It starts from demanding that 5,000 shillings. Any decent human being, this doctor, would have just done that alafu amcharge baadaye. But usipotolea 5,000 hatutaendelea. Okay, damn. Sawa, acha tuendelee because it gets worse.
The hospital recommended an urgent transfer to Kenyatta National Hospital, and that's when another demand came. She was required to pay 50,000 shillings to initiate the referral. Time was ticking. The baby was in critical condition. Still, no ambulance would leave until she paid.
Enda mtoto anapelekwa referral Kenyatta, natafuta inatakiwa 50,000. Utafuta 50,000 ndio mtoto apelekwe. Nikaambia 50,000 naitoa wapi? Tafuta mama maana mtoto anachoka.
She borrowed the money thinking her child would finally get the help he needed. But when the ambulance stopped, they weren't at the Kenyatta National Hospital.
So, she didn't have... Remember, she struggled with 5,000 shillings. If there's one thing, IKONINI long enough, Monaga. If there's one thing that I normally do is I shout out our mothers. And I always shout out our mothers because we live in a period of masculinity channels and all the nonsense. The ones that will tell you that women are enemies and women don't know anything. But a lot of Kenyans that I know have been raised by their mothers. I've been in settings where like boarding schools, my mother wanatokea, nimetembeaga katikati ya tao, I can see mothers selling the most basic stuff just to be able to feed their kids. So I know that. And that's why I know that a mother's love. This woman, she needed to save her kid. So what did she do? She borrowed 50,000 shillings. And this 50,000 shillings was for an ambulance. And the ambulance was supposed to bring the kid to Kenyatta National Hospital. Wakabaki wametoka Loitoktok and they fika Nairobi. Wakifika Nairobi, where is the ambulance?
Hospital.
Tunafika, tunaambiwa tushuke, tumeshafika. Kushuka kuangalia, nauliza kwani hapa ndio Kenyatta. Dereva ambulance akasema mimi hapa ndio nimeambiwa. Au nasi wakasema hapa ndio tuliambiwa.
The ambulance had taken them to Abyan Hospital in Isli, a small private dispensary never mentioned in the referral. And
Skeo, never mentioned in the referral. So this hospital was never mentioned in the referral. And kulikuwa nashindwa why I kept talking about wealth is about money. This is not about life. It's not about health. It's just about money. So these people come up with a way where mtu atakuja and tutamrefer to Kenyatta Hosi, but since Kenyatta Hosi ni a public hospital and we might not be able to make as much money as possible, wacha tumpeleke kwa a private Hosi. So there has to be a certain level of collusion, either with the doctor na watu wa ambulance na watu wa hii Hosi, ama doctor na watu wa Hosi, ama ambulance na watu wa Hosi. There has to be a certain level of collusion. This is not a mistake. Before today, ushasikia nikibonga juu Isili, I've never talked about Abyan Hospital because I never knew about it. So there's no one in Loitoktok who knows about Abyan Hospital. So anyone to be driving from Loitoktok akienda Abyan, it's someone who knows exactly what they're doing. And the only mission is money. And as I keep saying, this woman does not have money. So her nightmare is supposed to be, yani it's just about to be more nightmarish. So skiza hapa jo. And now, this is a point where now I'm not looking at Abyan Hospital and blaming the doctors. Now I'm looking at Abyan Hospital as a business. This is a business-making venture. But apart from it being a business-making venture, it turned into an extortion institution and extorting someone. This is someone who had been referred to Kenyatta National Hospital. The first thing unafaa kuangalia ni letter na kuwa like, damn, you're referred to Kenyatta, toka. But if you're thinking about money, you won't care about that. Utakuwa like, wow, most probably iko na title deed. Watauza alafu tucheki. Wacha tuendelee.
And that's where the second nightmare began. Here, Esther says she's been barred from seeing her son, assaulted, insulted, and left without updates. Video evidence seen by Citizen TV shows a hospital administrator assaulting Esther after her husband was beaten for asking to see the child. Desperate, the family is now pleading for the Ministry of Health to intervene and transfer the baby to Kenyatta. We conducted the medical superintendent at Loitoktok Hospital, Ezekiel Kapkoni, who says the hospital bears no responsibility for where the ambulance driver took Esther and her baby. We sought to find out from Abyan Hospital why they received a patient whose referral letter clearly stated he ought to have been taken to KNH. The hospital CEO, only identified as Abdullah, said they were duly credited and advised us to take further questions to the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Council.
So, ukiona kitu moja, utanotice hapo nje, kuna sign ya NHIF. And apart from sign ya NHIF, kuna sign ya sikuizi sasa ni SHA. And I remember I was talking to someone and they were telling me that this is what happens normally. Kenya is a sort of country where having medical insurance puts you in danger. And how it puts you in danger is we've come and we've taught everyone that it does not matter how you make money as long as you make money. This is the reason why utapataga like once in a while when I question the president's wealth and how he wears flashy stuff and what people will be there, why are you pocket watching? When I question the fact that there is no amount of chicken that you can sell to be a trillionaire, watu wanaongea mavi. And this is the same thing. Squeezy SHA waga ina pay, I think it's monthly payments and it's a lot of money. So why not take advantage of that? Why not have patients diverted to your hospital so that you can extort the government? You can send some very big invoices and nothing is going to happen. And don't forget, there's also the tribal element in Kenya. So since there's a tribal element, watu wa Abyan have to have a certain level of comfort where they're like, you know what, if what's come to us, our tribe might just save us. I won't get into the details of that. But this is the reality of this country. So now you have a situation whereby a patient was not supposed to go kwenda Abyan, alienda Abyan na bili kakuwa ni ya 3 million. I think the latest thing that nimesikia juu hii ni yao KMPDC walienda huko na akachukua mtoi, but apparently wakapata pia kulikuwa na mtoi fulani the same hospital with the same amount of bill ya 3 million shillings. So that happened, and this is where it gets more ugly. When I played this story kwa Ian, Ian ended up calling, I think it's a cousin of his, and the cousin told us about another hospital, and he said, your hospital, all they need to know is how much you're insured. So wanaangalia uko insured hivi, umepelekwa, maybe you're even dead, tayari usha dead, but wanajua umekuwa insured uko zizizi, huyu mtu wacha tumpeleke ICU. Wanaangalia uko insured 3 million shillings, utaka ICU for 3 days, so ulisha dead, just so that they can make money. And unaweza enda pia. Another thing that happens is pia Ian akanipatia story ingine ya uncle yake. I think hii story shaipatiana kwa podcast, where an uncle of his had tuberculosis, but a lot of people assume that if you have tuberculosis and you admit that you have tuberculosis, you're admitting that you have HIV. So uncle yake hakuwa anataka ku believe yuko na tuberculosis. So vile alienda Kenyatta Hosi, the doctors at Kenyatta Hospital told him like, you have tuberculosis and TB na tiba, so we need to get you and you need to start getting treated. But the guy was like, no, there's no way naweza kuwa na TB, because TB ni ya watu wa ukimwi. So he refused treatment, went to a private hospital. They were like, hauna TB, uko sijui na what and what, started operating on him. Bill kafika huko 3 million shillings, and the guy died. When he died, autopsy kafanywa, kapatikana he had TB. And this is the reality, and you have to think about it and be like, yes, we can look at the political class and always be like, the political class this, the political class that, but we never look at ourselves. When you look at health, I've never worked in the health industry, I'm in the medical field, but when I look at it, it's one of those things where you should have pride in your work. And talking of pride, hapa Kenya wasota mtuongea tunataka mwafa naongeaga tu, but if there is a field in Kenya that has people who love their work, ni art. There are people who I know, hata nipigie saa 9 usiku na niwaambia, I want you to do a masterpiece of what you do, they'll do that masterpiece. If I'm talking about characters kama kina Abel Mtua, I talk about Bien, I talk about who, like talk about rappers akina Octopizo, Calligraph, King Kaka, talk about who, talk about which other singers, the whole soul generation. Like, these are people who love what they do and they do it to the best of their abilities. That's the least I expect from doctors. And kutakuwa na excuse, I don't get paid enough. If you don't get paid enough, I'm sorry to say, but you can quit. I'd rather not get treated than get treated by a doctor who doesn't care. A doctor anaweza nipasua, alafu aseme niaje, deposit pesa ndio niendelee. Alafu all these institutions that make doctors look bad. So now you have an institution where someone can be transferred from Loitoktok, anafaa kupelekwa Kenyatta Hosi, ends up at this institution, and this institution is still open for business. Like, what do we have here? So yeah, hiyo ndio situation tuko nayo hapa Kenya, and will it ever change? I don't know. IKONINI.